Welcome to Bat Therapy, psychology of Batman, superheroes, and other comic book characters. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We are your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
Okay, so we have talked about Dick Grayson. We have talked about Jason Todd.
In a different season.
Yes, in a different season. For you newcomers, go back. We talked about Jason Todd. We've talked about Tim Drake. And now we're going to talk about the current Robin, Damian Wayne.
Now, question. Is this one your least favorite Robin?
He was.
Ooh, okay.
He was. But it's not his fault. It's not his fault. It really isn't. Like I'm very torn. I am very torn because going back so for this one, our source material, we went back and watched all of the DC animated movies that Damian pops up in. So Son of Batman, Batman Bad Blood,
and Batman versus Robin.
And then I also had a chance to take a look at, I also watched while I was at it, Teen Titans versus Justice League, which he's in that one.
Oh, dang it.
He's in that one as
let
well.
Me know that,
yeah.
I'm going to have to rewatch that later. It's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
It's okay. I probably didn't
anyway. But I tell you, he is all 5'4", 140 pounds, a whole lot like his dad. And yeah. And so, I know that in psychology, nature versus nurture is one of those things that comes up a lot, but good Lord.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Okay, so he was your least favorite Robin?
He was.
Because he's like your favorite superhero.
But at the same time, let me say it, like, he's my least favorite Robin the way that I have a least favorite donut. I love donuts.
I like that, yeah.
I love donuts, no matter what. No matter where they come from. Do I have a favorite?
Okay.
Yeah, but it's fine. It's the same thing with pizza. If someone's like, hey, I'm ordering a pizza, I'm not even going to ask where they're ordering it from because I'm going to eat it. It's pizza. Pizza's always good. That's how I feel about the Robins. They're all They're all wonderful, colorfully decorated child soldiers. I love them.
All right, that's fair. Okay, so
he grew on me though. Damian had to grow on me.
So that's the thing, is that Damian is a little shit.
Yes. I said it so many times. I said that exact phrase so many times while watching it. I was like, he's such a little shit. Like, I said it so many times. But
here's the thing. That's in spite of everything, that's developmentally appropriate.
It absolutely is. It absolutely
and in fact,
is.
He's ahead of the game. So I personally see him as mature, particularly given, we talk about certain things, how the development happens with women versus men. And so with some of that, even I would say he's developmentally ahead, which makes sense because there's a lot of things. They essentially tried to make a homegrown 10-year-old assassin. So
he is, yeah. And so I think, he's developmentally ahead. And I feel like they caught it just in time. Like,
you mean switching him from being with League of Assassins
yes.
to the Bat Crew? I agree.
They caught it just in time. So for those of you that don't know, spoilers here. Yes, Talia al Ghul basically more or less date raped Batman and got pregnant, had Damian. Bruce had no idea Damian even existed at all. And Talia gives Talia turns over Damien to Bruce because there's a whole plot line going on with someone after the League of Assassins, and she wants to protect him, so she gives him to Bruce in these movies. And so Bruce, out of nowhere, just goes from "I am the knight" to "I am also a dad." And talk about heroes in training. I don't know who's the hero in training more: Bruce learning to be a father, which, or Damien learning to not be an assassin. Because the thing is, and this is what's also interesting, because I say Bruce learning to be a father, but this is his fourth time doing it, right? Like, he's
Mm,
not like he like Dick Grayson.
yep.
But like, yeah, you had Dick Grayson, you had Jason Todd, but in those, the biggest difference was there he was doing a lot of teaching, but he
Yeah.
didn't have to do a lot of undoing. Whereas with
Mm-hmm.
Damien, looking at Damien, the interesting thing about him, he was raised from a baby to be not just a killer, but the ultimate killer.
Yeah. Also, can you imagine? Like, how do you take him when he's 4 months old? What kinds of things are they doing? Are they holding up black and white pictures for him, but it's of people ninja attacking people? Or I'm just curious as to the first few months or years and what
It's
that
like a baby
training is.
rattle that looks like a sword,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
It,
it's all kinds of
it,
things.
it, yeah, it takes your brain to some interesting imaginative places. But yeah, it's a really good point. So one of the really poignant pieces that I remember from the movies and watching them is there's this scene where Damien's talking to Bruce and essentially pointing out, okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, I didn't have a normal childhood, but you also didn't have it great. Yeah, essentially, all the death and everything. And Bruce is like, I mean, yeah, I had trauma. I also had, and he lists off people, and he had friends, he had family. He was like, you you had trainers, and that's different. And I think that that was such a really great way of summarizing the unique pieces of Damien, where Bruce was used to becoming the trainer of children.
But
This
yeah,
was a child who actually wasn't really a child anymore, and the training had already happened. So it's almost okay, things needed to, because they didn't happen in the proper order. Okay, now Bruce needs to really be a parent, where before he could get
yeah.
away with this pseudo parenting thing.
Especially because he's dealing with a kid that's just like him, which
Mm,
makes it more difficult.
yeah.
And also, everything that Bruce said, like, yes, I had a team, I had people to teach me, I had people to train me. I'm sitting over like, yeah, Bruce, you're just now figuring this out too. Like, it's not one of those things where you embrace this family all along. You're
Mm,
barely doing it now. But I do love that he's like, I'm going to teach it to my son, though. And that happens so many times, I feel like, as parents. Like, the things we've dealt with, the flaws that we have, it's one of those things where, like, okay, I know how much I dealt with this. I want to get it right with my kids so that
mm,
they don't deal with this on the same level that I did. But it's so much harder with Bruce because he's like, oh, it's a 10-year-old and he's my 10-year-old. It's a Tuesday. Um, it's 2 in the morning. All right. I guess I have a son now. And it just happened so
yep.
fast.
Happened so fast, and his son knows he's Batman. His
Hmm.
son is raring to go. He's like, hey, hello, I'll be your Robin. Just don't act like I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And Bruce is, whoa, let's slow this down, which of course results in, I love how he puts up all of these security ways to try and keep Damien in, and then Alfred takes them down
Yeah.
to show to show Damien that they all trust him,
Yeah.
which is very interesting stuff. But yeah, you get to see all of the different ways that it's funny because in the struggle with everything, we know that Dick Grayson. So I actually love how Dick Grayson comes into these storylines quite a bit,
Yes.
and it's really cool because you see Dick actually come around more to how Bruce had approached everything, and I think he
Hmm.
sees things in a clearer light,
Yes.
in a way that sits with him better, that he can live with when he sees what Bruce is trying to do for Damien, and he can better understand and see it from the
Yes.
outside. It's hard when you're the kid or you're the parent
Oh yeah.
and you're in the thick of whatever's going on. There are curfews and grounding and don't take the Batmobile out tonight, and you're stuck in the thick of all this stuff. Dick Grayson and Alfred are pretty cool characters because they can step back a little bit, and so you get their perspectives on everything too. Because yeah, you've got these two super stubborn Waynes who are really well trained. You throw in some crime and some other stuff going on, and ooh, yeah, it's a tense household for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, it's funny because Damien is it's really funny because I think he's supposed to only be 10
Yeah.
when we first meet him, but he is acting like a angsty teenager. Like he is
Oh yeah, for
it's
sure.
really funny. Like they jumped they went ahead and jumped because he's like, yeah, he and he's abrasive and just even when people are trying to be nice to him, he just makes them feel just he just makes their skin crawl. It's one of
Well,
those things.
and all that is true. And if you pay close attention to what he's saying, once again, he's a little shit. And you realize, what's he been exposed to? What's his life been like up until this point?
Yeah.
So he's been raised by Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul. He's not just raised to be the epitome assassin, but essentially to take over the League of Assassins eventually because of his superior genetics.
Yes.
They've tried to, and I want to say in some storylines they actually in some ways speed up his aging process, so he's 10 but technically been around for less years. I don't know if that was true in these movies though.
I know that
But
they did that with um in Bad Blood. There was that
so
the
there
big
there's
guy
a
was a
character that
Damien
got sped up.
clone.
Some things I
Yeah.
think hint at Damien having been sped up a little bit, but I don't know how true to.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at that because there's so many different storylines and time skips and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. So we
Um,
gotta stick with like a mainstream of things. But there's so many reasons that he has aged more quickly.
he's
And
definitely very mature
also,
for his age.
of course he's gonna snub his nose at, I'm sorry, you want me to do what that other 10-year-olds do? Why is that important? I can
Yeah,
literally be manning an army right now and changing the course of countries.
and he's very
Why
smart
would
like his dad.
I what'd you say?
He's very smart like his dad too.
Yeah,
Like as far as
true. Yeah.
detective work goes and everything, he's just on it, and he's had so much training. And another thing that's funny that you touched on is the fact that he was raised by Ra's al Ghul and Talia, and now he's in this situation where literally everyone around him is like, "Your grandpa sucks." Like he's just like,
Oh,
"What?"
that switch. Yeah,
Like
now that he's with the Bat
he's
family.
like, "What? My grandpa was a great man." They're like, "He was a coward. He's da 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 da," and all of this, and he's just constantly just like
And also,
his
you
grandpa's just
kill
getting
because
dunked
you
on.
need to you essentially you have to exact, what is it that they say, they end up saying justice not vengeance. Is that the saying that they end up
Yeah.
repeating a lot? So he's used to vengeance, and also we use life and death as a way
Hmm.
of manipulating and moving things. And then he comes to the Bat family and they say no.
Yeah.
He goes, what do you mean no?
Yeah.
uh but here's the thing about this little shit that he is. Think about how little time it took for him to actually embrace what was going on with the Bat family. Now, granted, there's still times where there's the temptation of killing, or people end up dying, or things happen, but he actually pretty quickly seems to be drawn toward this way of crime fighting that is more about justice and trying to reduce the lives lost, which is interesting. It's interesting how quickly he shifts. Now it's not always smooth, and that's how life is. There's a part of him that's always going to pull for the assassin side, but it it was interesting to see how quickly he took to the Bat family in some ways.
Yeah. And well, and the thing is, I think part of it too is Bruce was kind of, it seemed like he was kind of doing this thing where it's like, you're going to follow these rules,
Mm,
but it was one of those things where he's like, I'm going to make you follow these rules, but as we go on, I'm going to kind of teach you why these rules are important. Like,
mm,
because from the beginning, he's like, we do not kill, no killing. But then throughout, he still trusts Damien enough to let him come out with them as Robin. And while they're on patrols, he's talking to him. He's telling them these things. He's like, hey, this is my trauma. This is what happened to me. This is why you can't kill. This is why it goes against. This is why we're no better than them. Like, he's giving them all of these details
yep.
along with the rules, which is important, especially when it comes to young adults, teenagers. It's one of those things where you really have to treat them kind of like adults. You have to be able to, you have to give them trust. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm going to meet you halfway. It can't be one of those my way or the highway things, because just like we saw in these movies, whenever Batman had a my way or the highway kind of deal,
Hmm.
Damien was like, highway,
Yeah.
I'm going
Or
to
enter
escape.
Talia. I'm gonna brainwash you, young son, if you
Right.
don't do what I want, which came later. Yeah. Yeah, I bet I would imagine that he probably thought that he had a lot of trust and responsibility
Hmm.
before he came to the Bat family. But in maneuvering through the Bat family, and once again, I do think that Alfred and Dick and others helped with this because Bruce definitely needed some help. But I think with that, he started realizing that actually he had a lot of power in some ways, but really not much control and probably not much trust for him to do things, more following through with the edict from above,
Hmm.
and that you will follow this to the end. And that freedom to make mistakes and try new and different things had to be so strange, especially
Oh yeah.
because he was trained up, this is the one and only way. And then plop, here you go. You go from essentially being raised in more of a militaristic band of people
Hmm.
focused on their own war, essentially, and then bloop, here you go in this completely different place. And yes, we're still going to use all that fighting, but we're going to do things way different. I mean, that's just a such a mental twist.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about how Dick Grayson is in a lot of these, he's
Mm.
the perfect character, I think, to be a big brother to Damien, because
Oh yeah.
he's so vastly different
Hmm.
than, as we talked about, he's so different from Bruce, which means he's also very different from Damien,
Yep.
because he can see those shades of gray. He's funny. He lets stuff go. He does not hold grudges, which is really big because Damien gets the best of him quite a few times.
Oh, I
Uh
know, right?
Damien, yeah,
How I know. I watched that and I was like, man, Dick Grayson's a better person than I am.
he's a better person, because the thing is, Jason Todd would have shot him.
Yeah,
Tim
probably.
Drake would have probably just left. It's like, I don't need this.
So Tim and Damien. So Tim wasn't in these movies, but they have issues, right? It they have more
They
of a
definitely
struggle.
butt heads. He butts heads with I think he butts heads with everybody really, but
Well, yeah,
with Dick he butts heads the least.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with Dick he butts heads the least, and everybody butts heads with Jason because he has his tendencies.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah. So we're talking about Damien and these shifts and everything going on. Another thing I found really interesting for him was I forget if it was the end of which movie it was the end of, but he goes off and does his own thing. It might be at the end of Batman versus Robin.
it is when he
But
goes and
essentially,
trains.
yeah. So, we're talking about the very strong vision and design for Ra's and Talia al Ghul, and how, yes, he's put to be in this amazing position at the top eventually, but also probably doesn't have much flex. And then he goes and like you said, all of a sudden he's somewhere where no, all of that stuff is bad and wrong, and we don't respect that person over there, even though he has a lot of power
Yeah.
with the League of Assassins and this, that, and the other. And he takes to that very, very quickly. I mean, he's still Damien, and he was still trained, and he still goes about things in a superior, I'm an adult 10-year-old kind of
Yeah.
way, but he connects to the that family stuff very quickly, and he connects the idea of his father, and because he was meant to be genetically superior, he's probably been hearing all this great stuff about his father too, so he's ready to go and take in what his father's telling him. But at the end of the movie, he essentially says, I need to leave, I need to go out on my own, because I the voices of everyone else are too strong,
Yes.
and I don't know where I am in all of this. And that also feels very developmentally teenager to me.
hmm And the thing is, too, one thing you really touched on is all of the different voices. So the
Mhm.
movie we're talking about, everyone, is Batman versus Robin. They kind of mix a lot of different elements in there because one of the things they do in this movie, they bring in one of my absolute favorite Batman storylines of all time. They bring in the Court of Owls, and there
Yes.
is a character in it named Talon who is basically uh a Batman who kills. You could almost put him
Yeah.
in that level. And he ends up talking with Damian a lot. And it's interesting because on one side, Batman is like, no killing.
Mhm.
And on the other side, there's Talon saying, trust your instincts. You were raised to kill. Go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
And so that's why I really do applaud Damien for saying, okay, I know I'm not going to kill, but I'm still going to go to the Himalayas because I got to figure out my why,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like we can always just do things, right?
Yeah.
We can always, if we're going to a job, we can go to that job, we can work it every day. But the most important aspect I think that keeps us at the job at times is the why, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's what Damien really needed to find. He really needed to find, like, hey, I've seen this mantra, I've seen this one, but what am I gonna do? What sets
Yes.
me apart? Because I've been trained, I can do either of these things, but what's the right thing to do? And I need to figure this out away from people
Yes.
whispering in my ear.
Yes. And so, this is obviously a very extreme set of circumstances. Um in terms of the parenting and what he's dealing with. But in general, there is this developmental process where you you grow and you're very connected to whoever is raising you, and eh, for us humans, we need a lot of that in order to learn how to survive and to function. And then at a certain point, you're developing to a point where you'll eventually need to be out on your own. And so a lot of times they talk about developmentally, that's why a lot of times there are these fractions and friction and conflict that can happen between the child and the parent. And I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know as a teacher, but that's a lot of times where some of that can come about because there's this natural process of needing to separate. You need
Yes.
to be able to create and develop your own voice, and there has to be more distance. You need more space to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very good point. Yeah, you need to be able to find your own way. And it's good that you have guides, but at a
Mm-hmm.
certain point, it's like you have these guides that are great examples, but you still have to paint your own canvas. You can't
Yeah.
paint another Mona Lisa. You can't paint another Sistine Chapel. You have to do your own thing. You can study everything. You can study it
Mm-hmm.
all, but what are you going to do with it? Right? How are you going to hone your craft? And so Damien, and the thing is, he's still a work in progress because um he he figures out his mantra, like, okay, like once he comes back from the Himalayas, he's like, okay, I'm gonna I didn't finish my training in the Himalayas, but I need to come back because my dad's missing and
Mm.
I got to figure this out. And then, of course, later on, he joins the Teen Titans, which is also very funny because he comes in and he rubs everyone the wrong way because once again, he's coming in and he's like, yes, we're the Teen Titans, but I'm built different. I'm Damian Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's Batman, and I'm better than all of you, and I know it. And it's like, even if it's true, you gotta keep it to yourself.
Yep. That's the thing is Damien, when you listen to him, you go, you're a little shit. You're not lying,
Yes,
but I still don't like it.
yes, yeah, yeah. You don't have to be a jerk about it. Like
Yeah,
it's
he's not lying, he's not gloating, he's not inflating. He grew up in a place where you don't sugarcoat things.
right. Right. And it's really funny because of course he has to learn to work as a team with the Teen Titans the same
Mm,
way he has to learn to work as a team when dealing with members of the Bat family, but he still has such good guidance because Bruce is actually extremely patient with Damien. It's kind of like how it's been a work in progress, like, and I remember someone once saying to me that, like, the most interesting thing about being a parent is you're watching them grow up and they're watching you grow up at the same time. Because
mm,
we've seen how Batman did things with Dick and with Jason and with Tim. And now it's like, okay, this one's a little bit different because one, it's a bit of a different situation because he was sprung on you. It wasn't a decision that you
mm,
made, it was something that was just thrown at you, right? While the other ones, it was like, I'm going to take this kid in. I'm going to take
yeah.
this kid in. I'm going to do this. This was, hey, here's a kid out of nowhere, and now you're a dad.
Well, and
And
here's the thing that, and I appreciate you mentioning it too, is okay, flinging a kid at him, it's also genetically tied to him. So
yes,
many people see that as, okay, this is my responsibility. And then though add the complicated flair of they allude to the fact that he was probably sexually assaulted.
yeah,
So it appears that Talia made this happen in a way that Bruce did not agree to.
yes,
There was not consent. In some ways, they make it seem like it was an oops baby, but in other ways, you're like, this is Talia Al Ghul, so how much oops is there?
right. Like, surely
So,
she knows some kind of secret technique. Like, if it's like,
secret technique to
yeah,
birth control.
there's ninjas where they need to be to kind of like it. Yeah,
To ward off all those semen. Yeah.
it's a League of Assassins, right? They do what they do. What they yeah. It's yeah.
So there's that complication too. And now granted in our society I'm not sure if he would see it that way. So first off, a lot of times we don't necessarily recognize sexual assault when it in fact is happening when it
Hmm.
comes to these. I know things can feel muddled to people even though technically there is a sexual assault occurring.
Right.
And then also there's this piece of, for some reason we believe that men are less likely to be sexually assaulted in some ways, or because we see men as sexual beings, well, they're having sex, so they must be enjoying it. When once again, consent. There's
It's a big
a giant
deal.
question mark about
It's a
consent there.
big deal. Yes.
Consent's a huge deal. I don't care if you've got a penis. I don't care if you have a vagina. I don't care if there's something else going on. Because hey, genetics is biology. It's not all black and white either. I don't care what's
Nope.
going on down there. Consent is important. So,
Yes. Absolutely.
um, with all of this, there's
He
it's
takes it in stride pretty well.
he takes it in stride considering everything going on. He doesn't even seem to blink about that piece. Even though he would be very obviously he'd be very much within his rights to pause and have to process what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
when it happened, I'm like, listen, I was looking at what it was rated, and it was PG-13,
Mm.
and so it was one of those things. I'm like, you're allowed one F bomb. If you're going to use it right now, Batman. Like, what the is this? like it's PG-13. You get one F bomb. Use it. Use it right now, because I think that's what almost any person would say if an assassin showed up and was like, that night you impregnated me. Here's your kid.
Not only
See
that,
ya.
you know that night where you lost control of yourself and obviously I was manipulating you? Baby.
Yeah, yeah.
Not cool, Talia.
Batman, how would your league how would your how would your how would all your enemies and villains feel when they found out you just hooked up with one of the villains?
Mm,
Right? And but yeah, he takes it in stride, and I feel like he is trying to be a better father to Damian than he was to the previous Robins, which
yeah.
I really respect the growth. I think he did the best that he could
Oh, yeah. Look,
with the
here's the
other
thing
three
about Bruce
Robins.
Wayne. He is obsessive. Yes. He's a control freak. Yes. He's all about getting things right. Yes. That makes some things really tricky with him being a parent. It also means that he's really going to strive to improve himself as he goes. He's not going to just assume he did it right. He's going to treat it like anything else, where granted it might not always feel warm and fuzzy. Although I think that's the part that he does best with Damien that he lacked before. You see him side by side or watching a movie with him or doing more humany things, less Batman-y things.
Yeah.
Um, so he's always someone who you'd expect to try and improve. And I'm glad part of that was showing a little bit of humanness
Yeah, let's
because
watch a
he's
movie
always
together.
struggled with that.
Let's eat popcorn. Let's go to a carnival. Like it's yeah,
Hmm.
it's really cool. It's really cool seeing them interact like that. And the thing is, I think as it goes on, Damien not only because I feel like from the beginning, Damien looked up to Bruce. Like when he
Yes.
realized that his father was Batman, it wasn't one of those things where he looked down upon him or he was embarrassed by it. It was like, whoa. I mean, I give respect where it's due. I still
Yep.
think I'm the greatest thing to ever touch the earth, but you're
But
definitely
once
a close
again,
second, father.
once again, that's the thing about Damien. He's a little shit, but it's not because he lies. It's
Yes.
but he plays it straight with everybody.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that stubbornness gets in the way for him sometimes, but if he can see clearly what's going on and um who who is doing something that he respects, he will see it and acknowledge it.
Yes.
He's that's one of the things that I think always brings me back around to him is I'm a strong believer that the our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses. The annoying thing about caring about other people, the things you love about them are also the things that really get under your skin.
Hmm.
And that's the thing with Damien. He always keeps getting me coming back because yeah, he's a little shit, but those same things about him are what make him really great in certain situations. Sometimes you just need that person who's just going to cut through everything, call the spade, and then he'll keep going.
Well, and what's interesting about Damien is he also he's abrasive. He's can be annoying at times, but he also does the right thing
Yeah.
a lot. Like when push comes to shove, it's like, all right, I'm not gonna kill. Even when it's like, oh, are you gonna go back with the League of Assassins or stay with
Mm,
Batman, stay with your dad? It's like, I'm gonna stay with my dad. And it's one of those things where he has the capability to make the decision for himself. So it's not one of those things where he's being pushed one way or the
mm.
other. It's him making an actual decision to do things the right way and do things better. And that's got to be so difficult for him, especially when you have a parent that might not believe the right thing. Like I
Mm,
think about it in our level. Like, say for instance, you might have a parent that is homophobic or xenophobic or
mm,
racist of some kind, right? And you know it's wrong, but you also love this person,
yep,
right? Like, this is someone that raised you. This is someone you have so many good memories with. This is someone that you genuinely love, and you know they genuinely love you, but you also can't idolize them because of what they stand for and what
yep.
they believe. And that's what's going on with Damien right now, because his grandfather is Ra's al Ghul. He's literally nicknamed the demon. Like, and it's like, what do you do with that? But he's like, I love my grandfather. He's a
Hmm.
phenomenal man. And as of right now, his grandfather still wants him to lead the League of Assassins one
Well, and
day.
actually, that hits on a really interesting point too, where what if what the parents want for you and and what you want for you might be different.
Yeah.
And not only that, because if there were more complicated relationships. So once again, he was treated like an adult from a young age, and he was trained, and he had trainers instead of family,
Hmm.
etc. And at the same time, clearly there was some level of respect and appreciation
Yes.
shared, and there's goodwill there. And they're wanting to lift him up into this place of privilege eventually. So even if it's not necessarily a bad thing, he saw that as a really great thing.
Yes.
If he doesn't want that for himself, and yet that's what his parent is wanting for him, or his family is wanting for him, that's a really difficult and once again, he's 10. Yeah, he's super
Yes.
mature for his age, and he's a kid.
He's a kid.
That's a really hard place to be.
Hmm. It's a
And
very
there are a
difficult
lot
place
of
to be.
people out there listening who can probably really relate to that. There are a lot of different scenarios where this happens. Um uh and actually too, actually one of the things that this hits on, interestingly, it can kind of compare to is uh with parents from another culture,
Hmm.
and then you move and they build a place, and maybe they have a business or they have certain things. They might have a specific idea of success for their kid
Yes.
coming into a family business, or getting certain education, or certain having certain jobs or things like that. It's not only something that happens when there's this culture shift, but it's a really common thing that happens there. But just generally, it's actually interesting because you kind of have the same thing happening here, where League of Assassins is very much its own culture in and of itself. And then here you are going into the Bat family, a completely different place. And all of a
Yes.
sudden, Damien is going, oh, there are other options out here.
Right.
There's probably still that pressure to become Ra's al Ghul's replacement.
Hmm.
And that's a lot for him
Solid
to
fallback plan.
sort through.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Because it's been the and it's what's rough for Damien is the world's on his shoulders no matter what decision he makes. It's like, either you're going to
Mm,
lead the League of Assassins or you're Bruce Wayne's soul blood heir.
yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
either way, because at one point you see him, he breaks into Bruce's office and he's looking through stock reports and breaking
Oh, that's
things
right. I forgot
down
about that.
and all of that. Like, he has it. He just
And he goes
he's
about it in such a cocky way.
such a
I
cocky
forget what he
way.
said. Something like, "I'm just looking over what's rightfully mine."
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, oh my God, this kid. Yeah. And it's like, you I can't completely hate him. That's how I always felt about Damien. It's like, I can't completely hate
I
him.
can't
And
hate him.
it's
That's
one of
good.
those things where you look at and it's like, he's just like his dad. His dad's just quieter about it. Like, it's
Oh, it's
like
true.
Bruce is definitely like, when it comes to the Justice League, he's like, yeah, I'm the smartest guy in the room. Yeah, I have a plan for everything. Yeah, I know it all. Yep, I'm richer than everybody. Like, he knows all of these things,
It's
but
true.
he lets other people say it.
Also true.
He didn't call himself the world's greatest detective. When all of the cops in Gotham were completely worthless and he was solving every single murder while Commissioner Gordon was just turning on lights on the building, that's how he got the name the world's greatest detective, because no one else could do it. Uh, so yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he's hand to hand fighter. How did he get that? Well, Arkham is full of people that can attest that he's a very good fighter. Like, and so he didn't. It was different. Like Damian comes in, he's like, I can beat up everybody in the room. I'm smarter than everybody in the room. And it's like, yeah, it may be true. Bruce just does it. And that's what makes him more likable. He's not out there bragging about how badass and
It
awesome
is
he is.
it is really tricky though, because you bring up a good point where even even in being given a choice, even in expanding out to now he has the Bat family and he has this whole different worldview that he can take in, he's he's still the kid of the top dog.
Yeah,
He doesn't escape that bit.
yeah,
And that is a really great point. He's kind of actually, you know who he is? He's a celebrity kid. He's like all the kids of all the Hollywood people these days
yeah.
who you know, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's kids who I don't know their names cuz I don't really care, but
Yeah. They have a
these
lot. There's a
kids
lot
are in
of
the
them.
spotlight and everybody wonders what are they going to do?
Yeah,
Um that's yeah, that's rough.
yeah.
And Damien's the kind of kid who, to his credit, it's not gonna crush him. He's not gonna quit, he's not gonna
Mm,
disappear, he's not gonna pull a Dark Knight Rises and run off with a chick to go to Europe. You know, he is gonna stick around and figure out how he wants to use that. But yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
yeah, and in a way, I think it might still be a little bit easier for him, because on the other side, the League of Assassins, it's like at the drop of a hat, we're going to kill thousands of people. We're just going to do it. And as we raise you, we're going to raise you to not be close to anybody and be able to kill anybody at
Mm.
the drop of a hat, which isn't normal nature. Like, I feel like normal nature, you do grow close to people. You do care about people. Whoever you're around, it's just one of those things
Well,
where
and yeah, I mean,
you
they
grow
say
attached.
evolutionarily, biologically, that makes sense. In order to survive, it's really
Yeah.
hard to do that completely alone,
Yeah.
and so does tend to be pulls, even if you really. So actually, this comes up a lot with mental health stuff too, where you can have someone who, anytime I talk to people, it never seems to go right, and I'm tired of people. I don't want to be around other people, and there's almost always still some draw.
Yeah.
You might see it through intense depression that comes from all the isolation. You might see it
Yeah.
from they're doing therapy even though they don't want to be around other people. Okay, well, something's still drawing you to change something.
Right.
There's almost always something pulling you toward other people, even when there's intense trauma, there's all these negative experiences, all these things that have you wanting to run in the opposite direction.
Hmm.
And so that's a really great point about the League of Assassins and how he's being raised to maybe go against some of those innate instincts of humanity, which maybe that's part of why he embraces some of the things of the Bat family so quickly, instead of stepping back and saying, "Whoa, you guys are weird."
Yeah.
Instead he goes, "Okay, let's see what I mean, my dad's been talked up. I mean, he's doing something right. Let's see what's going on." And he's drawn into it.
He's, well, yeah, and the thing is, he's 10.
Yeah.
He's 10, and nobody wants to be on all the time.
Mm,
It's just like when there is classroom me, there is dad me, there's different parts of, there's great son me, like, there's, but nobody wants to be on all the time. League
Mm,
of Assassins, he's on all the time. He's the grandson of the demon. He's tallest kid. He's the heir to the League of Assassins. At least on the other side, he still does get to be a kid. It's like,
it's
hey,
true.
you want to go to?
Despite all his all his fight to the contrary,
Oh
they
yeah,
damn it, they're gonna make sure he knows what kids do.
one of my favorite scenes when watching these movies. He's at the carnival just sitting by himself, and Raven comes over and offers him some cotton candy. And he begrudgingly just grabs a piece of the cotton candy and eats it. I'm like, stop acting like you don't enjoy it, Damien. Be happy, damn it. You're 10. Like, it was just so funny. Like, just how he just so annoyingly grabbed the cotton candy and just ate it. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you like it. It was so
That's
good.
and see that's so Bruce.
Yeah,
You're right. I think that I just always come back around to him because yeah, he's just a noisier version.
yeah.
A noisier version raised by assassins.
A noisier, less mature
Well, yeah. I mean, he's
version.
10.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, and but that's another big thing. That's another big thing too, because like I said, with Bruce, Bruce was like, "Oh, I'm gonna turn like 18 and then go off and train." By then,
Mm,
his mind developmentally was a lot further along than a
yep.
10-year old's, right? And so when he's learning all of these things, he's compartmentalizing it in different ways. Damien learned to kill someone when he was 5.
Yes.
Like,
Which that's the very reason it surprises me how quickly he takes to the Bat family. Now, arguably, I think part of that is because we were focusing on animated movies. And
yes,
so, one of the things I don't always love about the animated stuff is things happen more quickly. You
it
don't get to
rushes
see the
things.
breakdown of things the way you do in comics.
Yes.
But so part of it might be just the how we were looking at Damien's story. Um, but just generally, it was surprising how quickly, is why I really liked your point about yes, they trained him from a very young age, and it's not natural. Certain things
Yeah.
they're trying to breed out of him.
Hmm.
Some things that are probably not only natural to him, but
Right.
to humans, to
Yes.
people. And he's so young that some of those things might really feel like a gap versus later on learning, deciding for yourself versus being plopped into it and something maybe not feeling quite right, and then
Hmm.
when you see something else finally, okay, here's something that was missing.
Right. And the thing is, Damien, you're right. They do rush it in the movies a lot because Damien's storyline in the comics is a lot different because he's in
Yeah.
Batman. He works with his dad throughout Batman Incorporated. His mom ends up like killing him. I can't even remember what happens, but he does get brought back because Lazarus Pit plot armor, I think. And but
Which
he
Jason Todd should be totally pissed about because doesn't Bruce bring him back?
yes.
Yeah. So
It's something
Jason
like
Todd,
that.
he probably got drunk that night when
Yeah,
he found out.
but
Yeah.
after that, of course, that's when he really kind of distances himself more from
Mm.
the League of Assassins. Like, this is my mom. She
Mm.
had me killed, right? And so that
Yeah.
definitely will push you in another
That's
direction.
yeah, so in the movies they hinted at that too, where she creates his clone that
Hmm.
then gets sped up to
Hmm.
become
And
so
that
he's
clone
what,
kills that.
20, 30.
Yes.
Excuse me. Yeah, yeah, he's 20 or 30, they speed him up to
Hmm.
age faster. And essentially she wanted a version of Damien that she could control completely, is how I
Yes.
took it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that happens, and then of course, when Bruce seemingly dies, like before the return of Bruce Wayne
Mhm.
and Batman RIP, when he dies, there's that whole thing where Dick becomes the new Batman
Oh, right, right, right.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Damien is still Robin, and so
Mhm.
now they're working together, and so yeah, that he it's oh, I love that you mentioned that because he is definitely a work in progress in the comics a
Yeah.
lot more than in the movies.
And I did miss that in the movies. I
Yeah.
got to admit, I like me a struggle.
Oh
Not
yeah.
not a struggle for someone for struggle's sake, but to see that growth and to
Yes.
see someone work through all those dirty, tricky bits. And so I definitely missed that part. And yeah, there's more tension, expansion on some of the tensions there. It takes understandably longer to figure out the relationships and just connecting with each other, and how it is not just between him and Bruce, but with Alfred and Dick
Yeah.
and all Titan, everybody. Um, but I think they got a number of those good things in there. Once again, I feel like with the animated movies, you've always gotta give them a little break because
Mhm.
there's only so much you can do in, what,
Yes.
80, 90 minutes?
Yeah, and then also like I always like knew there was a time skip because like I said, I've read
Mm,
plenty of comics with Damien in them, and I've seen his progression. It's just that they sped it up. And the thing that I do love about the comics more is I love being able to relate to a character. Like, oh
yeah,
wow, I empathize with that. Like, oh, I feel that. I understand how they're feeling, like being torn like that, instead of at the beginning, I was a 10-year-old killer, and 80 minutes later, I'm Robin and I'm perfect. Right. And so it's one of those
yeah,
things where I do love that progression showing like, hey, people can change from whether it's an addiction,
mm,
or whether it's a tendency to get into the wrong kind of relationships with people.
mhm,
And I love it because in the comics or like in books and stuff like that, when it takes a lot longer, that medium takes a lot longer, you get to see that progression that's
yes,
more realistic and what's expected of
I
us.
wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.